Senator, thanks so much for being here. It's good to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
So I think it's fair to say you are the highest profile GOP critic of the president, but you voted with the president and your colleagues on things like Affordable Care Act and taxes, so it's not ideology. It's obviously something more. What is it that you find to be so objectionable in Donald Trump?
Well, there are a lot of policies that I disagree with. His, what started out as a Muslim ban turned into a travel ban. Yeah. His position on immigration, the wall. A lot of these things simply haven't come up for a vote. Some of the things that have come for a vote, what you mentioned, Affordable Care Act or tax policy, I've voted on many times long before the president got there. So
but there's more to the animus,
I'm a
is
conservative.
there not?
Oh, you bet. I mean, I think that you ought to be, if you're a conservative or claim to be a conservative, you should not just be conservative on policy, but in behavior as well, and in comportment and demeanor. And the president is decidedly not. And it makes a difference. Words matter. Behavior does matter. And that's far from conservative.
Speaking of words matter, you don't mince yours either in your book, Conscience of a Conservative, or on the floor. You likened the president to Stalin in January on the floor, and you did.
I should say, well, what I said with regard to Stalin is that the president should know that that phrase, enemy of the people, referring to the press, has a very ignoble pedigree, and that he ought to know better that when that phrase is used by people like Stalin or Mao, I don't believe that the president is like Stalin. Stalin was a killer.
But even when you do that warning, Senator, it seems it's quite clear from having read the book as well, you don't just see this president as a threat to what you see the core values of your party, but a threat to American democracy as well, yes?
Well, I do think that this president, with a wink and a nod at dictators, using language like he does against the press, then those are things that really gnaw at our democratic institutions and norms. And once you go past that, once we normalize this kind of behavior and accept it, where do we go from there?
So why is it that I could count on one hand the number of your Republican colleagues who have the courage to put country ahead of party? I mean, other than a few retiring people, Senator Corker, yourself, and a few others, there's nobody, essentially. What's that about? What are they saying in cloakrooms to you about the president that they're unwilling to say in public?
I mean, there's a lot of consternation about what's going on, but you pay a price. You do. I would have liked to have served another term, but not at that cost. And and it became clear to me that unless I was willing to condone the president's behavior, agree with some of his policies, and agree not to criticize him, basically embrace him, there's no path in a Republican primary right now. I think that will change, but for the time being, that's the way it is.
But does not the defeat of Roy Moore, who I think one could argue was an aberrational candidate, and the election the other day in Southwest Pennsylvania, does that not convince some of your Republican colleagues who have been hiding out, and I mean those words, to say, I actually can stand up and say what I think and survive? No?
We will see, but it hasn't yet, I can tell you that.
Isn't there a Pogo-esque aspect to this, too? I mean, what you've criticized the president for the most part, is not news to the American people. No. As of November a year ago, they knew about 19 women accusing him of some form of sexual harassment or assault. They knew virtually all the things that you know that troubled you. They decided, at least electoral college, by the electoral college count, that he should be the leader of the free world. So are we not in part to blame for what you say is wrong? So how did they get it so wrong? What happened to America?
Well, part of it is, on the part of my party, and I talk about it in the book, it's kind of a Faustian bargain. We'll agree to overlook this because we're getting, tax reform. We're going to get health care reform. We can get conservative judges, and that all makes it worth it. We can overlook this. But in the end, we're giving up a lot more than we know. When we have a president that acts as our president has, particularly with regard to foreign policy, trade, our fragile alliances, these things are really a lot more in danger than we know right now.
Another foreign policy issue. The New York Times editorial, finally, these are verbatim, Trump has something bad to say about Russia. What's your analysis of why he's the last man to be willing to criticize Vladimir Putin?
Been completely puzzling.
But how about the Russia thing? You don't think there's collusion? A lot of analysts say the reason he is so unwilling to strike out at Putin himself, or until a day or so ago, Russia in general, is because there is some collusion. You don't buy that, do you?
I think if there is, that'll be found by Bob Mueller. I have the ultimate confidence in him. I'm not sure that campaign was in a position to collude with anybody, frankly.
What does that mean?
But I do believe that the Russians certainly sought to influence and did attack our election process, and they did favor him. Now, whether that was dispositive or not, that's for somebody else to decide.
So you're not saying you know that there wasn't collusion. You're saying that the facts are not yet out that would lead you to that conclusion.
That's correct.
One last substantive issue, guns. You used to be a real favorite of the NRA. My understanding is Wayne LaPierre actually went to Arizona to campaign for you. Was Sandy Hook the epiphany time? Because you're now sponsoring raising the age on assault weapons, I think on high-capacity magazines as well. What happened to you?
I have to say, some of these events certainly have an impact. I mean, a lot of them, like this Parkland shooting, I don't think there was 1 in 100 Americans who knew that were prohibited from buying a handgun until you're 21, but you can buy an AR-15.
I didn't know
that. And why in the world should we, if we think it's important enough to deny them a handgun, do we give them an AR-15? And plus, bump stocks. I'd never heard of what it was. I grew up on a ranch. We have guns. Bump stock, that was completely foreign. So some of these things have just come up. But things like, for example, no fly, no buy. There is no way we ought to allow those who are on a no-fly list or a selectee list to purchase a weapon. That's something that I've always supported in terms of no-fly, no-buy, that the NRA has always opposed. And so I haven't always been there with every one of their issues, but I am a supporter of the Second Amendment. But there are things that we can and should do, and I'm glad that it looks as if the Parkland event may be the Rubicon.
Not for Congress, though, is it?
Not yet, but we're not there. We're not finished.
Did the president do a 180 from what he did in that public meeting because of the NRA?
No doubt.
Let's spend the last minute or two in politics if we can. You didn't vote for Trump. Would Hillary Clinton not have been better than Donald Trump?
All I can say is Evan McMullen was on the ballot, and he seemed to be a better option than Donald Trump. I could not have voted for Donald Trump.
But would Hillary Clinton not have been a better president?
That's a hypothetical.
It is. Everything is.
I don't need to go down that road. All I can say is, from the beginning, long before he was a candidate, when he pushed the birther theory, which I thought was awful and mean-spirited and frankly racist, that to the first day on his campaign to refer to Mexican immigrants as rapists, and then to go after John McCain, and then the judge, the Indiana-born judge, and referring to him as a Mexican in a pejorative way, then Access Hollywood and everything since, the Muslim ban. I just could have never gone for him.
I'm betting you're not a betting man. Is that correct? I didn't think so. If you were, what are the odds of you jumping into this thing in 2020? I know you don't like hypotheticals, but assuming you'd make one exception. I mean, you're seriously looking at this, are you not?
Well, it's not been in my plans. My plan is to retire at the end of the year, which gives me 10 more months to focus on work in the Senate and to speak out when I think that somebody should speak out.
You were in New Hampshire, were you not, Senator?
I wasn't, but let me just finish. Yeah. I've not ruled it out. I hope somebody does challenge the president in a primary. I think that Republicans everywhere, a lot of Republicans, are wanting to be reminded of what it means to be conservative, to what decent politics actually was and can and should be. And so I hope somebody does run in the primary, and I think that somebody will run as an independent as well. But there definitely will be a challenge.
Senator Flake, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for your time. Hope to see you a lot in the future.
Thanks.